Hello, listeners. Kathy Lawless, Life Story Curator, bringing you the podcast series, How Did I Get Here? A series of interviews designed for people just starting out in their careers, people in transition, or possibly feeling stuck, and giving them access to the stories of people who have been there, done that, so that they might be inspired with some new ideas, or maybe just comforted knowing that they are not alone, that everybody starts somewhere and everybody goes through times of transition and times when they feel stuck. Today, I'm very excited to be interviewing Jodi Foster. She is a senior project manager at Ultra Consulting, and she wears a second hat, which is she's a certified integrative health coach. Welcome, Jodi.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I so appreciate you joining us. And Jodi and I met through a mutual friend, and so we've just gotten to know each other. I think, gosh, has it been about a year now?
It has. We're coming up on a year. It's crazy how time flies.
Well, and I think this COVID year is like, anyway, time is different in COVID. So we'll just go with that. So, okay, well, let's jump in. Let's start with the icebreaker questions, and then we'll get to, how did I get here?
Sure.
So tell us where you grew up, how many siblings, and where you fit in the birth order, and kind of how all that influenced and shaped you as an adult.
Absolutely. So believe it or not, I grew up in Telluride, Colorado.
Ooh, Colorado native.
Yes, very native. And when I grew up there, it was literally a town of 500. It was a mining town. So I'm aging myself there.
So this was the 1800s?
Yeah, exactly. So that was before the big ski area. It was just an old rope tow. The great thing about growing up like that, it was like growing up in Mayberry. Everybody knew each other, and we had a lot of freedom, ran through the town because everybody watched out for each other. I am the youngest of four. And when I say the youngest, I am way younger. So the brother that's closest to me is 8 years older than me.
Wow.
I have another brother that's 11 years older than me, and a sister that's 13 years older than me.
Wow. Yeah. So yeah, you were the youngest.
Very much the youngest. So in some ways I was an only child. I think that they say that within the birth order, but my sister started her family when she was 18. So I have a nephew that's actually only 6 years younger than with me, five and a half years younger than me. So we kind of grew up together. So he's also like a brother, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah. Kind of a little extended family there. And
Absolutely. So her children, I kind of grew up with her kids. She had 3 kids. And I treated them like a big sister would treat. I did not treat them like an aunt. I treated them like a big sister. So we all know what that looks like.
Yeah, well, you weren't old enough to know what aunts do, right? Or
no, I had no clue.
We're going to be in it. So what were some activities then in Telluride? Were you a skier?
I was a skier. I still have my first pair of skis. They are penguin skis, wooden with leather straps, because nothing like a good idea of putting a 3-year-old on a pair of wooden skis. So I grew up skiing. I grew up hiking. I grew up trail running, very much outdoors. My dad was a school teacher, and he, in the summertime, he would drive the Jeep tours over the passes. So he'd do tours. So I also grew up Jeeping. So we'd go up over Imogene, Black Bear, you name it. That was part of how he earned extra income in the summer months.
Yeah. Well, and when you live in, I think, a mountain town in a small community like that, you do what it takes, right? I mean, you have different jobs. A lot of people are, they're in the volunteer. There's a volunteer fire department, or the EMTs are all volunteer, that kind of a thing, right? You wear
and he was also a volunteer fireman too. So he wore 20 hats.
Yeah, all hands on deck when an emergency happens, right? In a small community.
Exactly.
So introvert or extrovert?
Extrovert. I would say flaming extrovert.
Flaming on. Okay, so you may be tipping the scale even. You sound like my older sister. She's very much on that side as well. Okay, so on the fun meter, scale of 1 to 5, 1 being couch potato and 5 being life of the party, where do you fit?
I would say 4, just because I do have a part of me that still likes to be alone. And I think that's part of just, growing up on the trails and in the mountains. So there is a part of me that likes that solidarity. But definitely, I like to go out there and be with a crowd.
So you get your energy from people, but it sounds like you also get your energy maybe from nature and being by yourself, and
Exactly.
so you can tap into both probably at different times. So for COVID, I'm guessing you're surviving well.
I'm surviving well as long as I can hit a trail. I can
Yeah.
get outside.
Yeah. And that you have this Zoom connection, right? At least have
Exactly. Yeah, this is very important to me. The Zoom connection is very important to me. I know a lot of people get very tired of it. I am, again, being the flaming extrovert, for me, it's great.
Yeah.
I actually get jazzed off of them.
Okay, on the risk meter scale of 1 to 5, where do you put yourself?
Oh, I was definitely a 5. I've taken a lot of risks, both personally and professionally.
And this over time stayed the same, kind of even when you were a young person?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we grew up skiing, and when I was a kid, and now I'm on metal skis, not wooden skis, right? I'm on metal skis with binders. I mean, we would ski down, which I would not advocate to anybody, but this is how crazy I was. We would ski down mudslide chutes. So you'd hike up to the top, ski down mudslide chutes, because why not? So did that for many years. I've skydived. I've kayaked down rivers. So yeah, I definitely say I live on that adrenaline junkie, risk taker type.
Oh, great. Well, I love to see now how this is going to play out in your story. So let's kind of transition to that. Why don't you talk a little bit about both hats that you wear now? You're in that corporate space, and it sounds also like you're in the entrepreneurial space. So tell us a little bit about what it means to be both a senior project manager and a coach, and then we'll get to how did I get here?
Sure. So I work as a senior project manager for Ultra Consultants, as you had already mentioned, and I work with companies, mid-sized companies in manufacturing distribution. So these are companies that are moving to the latest and greatest digital technology, right? So they're going through some sort of digital transformation. And my job is primarily on the implementation side. So I'm working with companies and teams in how do they get there? How do they get from where they are today to their future state, where their systems are the state of the art and they are staying ahead of that curve. And there's a lot of personalities that need to be managed through that, and a lot of if you will, change management, right? Because people get stuck in the old ways, and this really forces them to change. I love it because it's dynamic, it's ever changing, and I get to work with senior leadership and helping them shape the future of their company. And that really jazzes me up.
Yeah, because many times that touches the whole culture of the company. So it's not just the technology and a thing. I mean, it really is about their whole company and how they do business. And therefore, totally get it. Totally get the
right. We always say this is not a technology project. It is a business project because it is a business transformation.
Yeah. Cool. Very cool.
Now, how I got the second hat, which kind of goes to my history, but we'll hold on that in just a moment. 3 years ago, I climbed because, as you know, I'm a risk taker. For my 50th birthday, I climbed Mount Olympus in Greece. That was always a goal of mine.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. Yeah, it was fantastic. I had decided 20 years prior to that was just going to be a thing I did for my 50th. And so when I turned 50, I told my husband I'm doing it. He's like, "Are you going to do it alone?" I'm like, "Sure." Ended up 13 friends joined us. So we summited it. It was amazing. We stayed on the top of Mount Olympus for 2 nights in a hostel, and which also was very interesting. However, you could feel the mold in the hostel because you have the Aegean Sea right, we're a little above 10,000 feet and you start at sea level. So you have the Aegean Sea right below and you're in this very old wooded type of hostel. So all of the folks that I traveled with, everybody commented on the mold. I had no idea that I had an underlying health condition where the mold overtook my body. So I hadn't even gotten off the mountain and started having these weird symptoms. Fast forward, I was diagnosed with something I had never understood before, with Lyme's disease, something I believe now that I've had for many, many years. and the mold really exacerbated it.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
Lyme is very opportunistic, so people can actually, it depends, right? If you read the CDC, they're going to say something different, but us, my fellow Limeys they'll got my back on this story. So yeah, so the Lyme itself is very opportunistic, and from there, my life changed. So I went from being this avid trail runner, because when I was talking about running trails, I literally would run events for trails. I would run the Mount Evans ascent. I would run the Imogene, and those are both extreme events. I would go to hot core yoga. I mean, I would do all this while I was working as well. I'd be volunteering in various things. All of that came to a screeching halt. I was very sick, and my only goal at that point was to get better and to keep my job, literally.
Yeah. So you went from being super healthy, climbing mountains, running events and competing, to like super sick, like overnight.
Literally overnight. And it was extremely demoralizing. It was extremely difficult because I was at a point where I could not get out of bed. I could not hold on my weight, which, at the age of 50, right, women are like, whoa, it's like, nah, it was a bad thing. I was losing weight rapidly. I was fortunate enough to find the right practitioner that found the Lyme and was able to start treatment, but it was a long process. And through those 3 years, I kept thinking to myself, I want to do something that's going to help other people that find themselves in this position. In Colorado, right, we say, we don't have Lyme here. I don't know if we do or not, but I can tell you in the Lyme group that I've co-facilitate, there's over 540 members.
Wow.
So for me, it's a point of education. So when I got healthy enough, I decided to go back to school and get certified as an integrated health coach, not only to learn more about for myself, but that I wanted to be able to give back to the community. I wanted to be able to help others who were professionals who found themselves in this situation and how to continue to move forward.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. And thank you for stepping into that line of work, because people need to know about this. It's funny, after I met you now, I know of 2 other people with Lyme's disease. And it's like, wow, this is, it's probably, it's one of those things where now I'm more aware of it. So I'm paying more attention, but it had never come up before. And so
Right.
it was, yeah.
And we just don't have the education here that they do probably East Coast. We just don't have the education. And there's just the lack of awareness, I think, among the healthcare professionals. And it's not to their fault. It's just the way it is. So there's a lot of self-advocacy, a lot of self-awareness that needs to happen for anybody going through this type of, anybody just trudging through this disease.
Yeah, yeah. Well, again, I'm glad you're doing work in this area. So, well, let's talk a little bit. So that's kind of how you got here to be the coach, but let's talk about how you got to be the senior project manager. So
Sure.
I'm going to take you back to junior high and high school. What did you want to be when you grew up? What were your career aspirations?
I was not sure. I was one of those people that I was not sure. First, I thought I wanted to be a buyer, like in a clothing industry. And before I went off to college, I worked for Mauricio's in retail and realized that was just too boring for me. It was not dynamic enough. And I was too young to understand what the word dynamic meant. But I can say that now that I reflect back, it wasn't dynamic enough. I enjoyed the people interaction, but it was just too flat. By my senior year, there was a grant that came out by the federal government that for a summer program. So I went to work at the Social Security office my senior year during the summertime. Actually worked full time. I was so, I drive myself to work. I thought I was such a big girl there. And this was in Grand Junction. And my whole job was to work with people who were coming into the office and who were frustrated as they were waiting to get their benefits or see their case manager. And I realized through that, I really enjoyed helping people. I really enjoyed working with them. It was from there I decided to go to school and secure my degree in psychology. But I actually went a step further in my undergrad. Now, this is really far from where I am today, so bear with me here. My undergrad is actually in criminology with a minor in psychology and sociology.
Wow, that's a lot of ologies.
I know, exactly. One of the things I learned though in school is I loved sociology. I loved it. I realized that I actually loved how groups come together, group dynamics, how they work together. My professor at the time said, well, if you're going to do that, the only thing that is really that you could see yourself as a professional would be teaching. And I wasn't interested in teaching. So I leaned more on the criminology because I was more interested on how people acted and certain behaviors and how those manifested.
Did that lead then? I mean, were you thinking law enforcement? When I think criminology, I'm thinking some sort of.
I was thinking law enforcement originally, and I actually had a professor at the time where I had an opportunity to intern because I wanted to actually be an investigator for the DA. And he pulled me aside and he told me a very horrible story about when he was an investigator of the DA because you're often first person on the scene. And I literally had nightmares for a week just from his story. So I realized that probably was not a good choice for me. So I ended up working in mental health, and I actually did that for 17 years. I worked with people with chronic mental illness. And the last 10 years, I worked for the Mental Health Center of Denver. And my role was, I came in as a counselor, but I fell into project coordinator. So my job was to help. This is back before technology, right? So everything was files. We were audited because we had a lot of grants, lots of funding from state, federal, and local grants. So we had to account for our services. And so the project coordinator, my job was to make sure that each counselor was doing their job and that we were drawing down those dollars appropriately. So I did that part-time as well as had a small caseload. And my specialty was with forensics, meaning folks that were coming out of prison that had a chronic mental illness.
Oh, wow. So then were you counselor or
psychologist? I was a counselor. Okay. Yep, I was a counselor. And my job was, the group that I worked with was we were reintegrating these folks into society. So we were getting them ready to work. We were talking to businesses about hiring them. So I was wearing 3 hats. So I'm used to wearing multiple hats. I was counselor working one-on-one with folks. I was then also project coordinator, right? Making sure that we were doing what we were supposed to be doing according to those grants. And I was out in the community talking to businesses and working on those relationships. So clearing the path so these folks would have employment, that there would be employment opportunities for them.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's really important work. I always wonder how you make that transition. I actually, a very small stint, I was interested in how Dress for Success. I don't know if you're familiar.
Oh, yeah, I'm very familiar with them. We worked very closely with them when I was at MHCD.
Great. Well, yeah, and they have a coaching program that goes along with the dressing part, to deal with, the dress is a big part of it, the dress meaning what you're wearing, not just a dress, obviously, but the whole coaching aspect of how do you make eye contact? How do you tell your story without telling your whole long sordid story? You tell the story about where you want to go and what you can bring, and those things that are kind of natural for those of us who've never been incarcerated, but once you've been incarcerated, you don't really have the same maybe the same, stories to tell or the same level of professionalism. So
Exactly.
it's quite fascinating to just see the behind the scenes on that. And so, wow, that's super important work. And
Yeah, and that's exactly what we did. In fact, we worked closely with Dress for Success. We would take our, our lady clients down there, and they would, be able to pick out I think they had, God, this was so long ago, but, they would get an interviewing outfit. And I think they got like 3 or 4 days worth of clothes. And I got to tell you, I just have to take a little side note to give the Dress for Success a huge shout out. The changes in the behavior of my female clients when they had those new outfits, and the confidence that instilled for them when they would go out to those interviews was a game changer for them. It really was.
Talk about, I gotta tell you, that organization, I can't give enough kudos to them, because they do not only the confidence of what you're wearing and how you present, but then the confidence of, I know what to say, and I've had help with my resume. It's really a very powerful organization.
Absolutely.
But it sounds like you worked with men and women. So
I did. I worked with men and women. I did. And not all of my caseload was forensic, but the majority of it was forensic. So it was a smaller caseload, but it was definitely, I was at the, again, being the risk taker I am, I was with high risk clients. And I did that for 10 years. One of the things I had always told myself was that I did not want to be a burned out social worker. I did not want to become cynical, and I did not want to become hard. And after 10 years of service, and I got to tell you, I still have friends with people that are still working in that field, and they do it every day with an open heart. And I'm in awe of them. It was hard for me. So at the end of 10 years, I had decided that I wanted to make the transition and move from nonprofit into corporate America, of which I had no idea what to do. I just knew I wanted to make the transition, and I knew that I had some skill because I was talking to business people every day. I was advocating, for hiring individuals with chronic mental illness. And with my caseload, not only did they have a chronic mental illness, they also had a criminal background. So I knew that I had some sort of tenacity, right, that I could carry into the business world. One of the best advice on one of my mentors, he had said to me, and I initially, and I'm not going to go down this road too much, I just want to touch on this. I started out in sales, but I'll tell you I'm just going to touch on this for a second. But he said to me, Jodi, if you can sell, you can do anything in business. And that just really resonated with me. So I started off and did a short stint as a salesperson. And that was really great for me to get my feet wet. And it was in professional services. So I had the opportunity to not only understand how to put deals together, but also how to shepherd those through completion. But then I had the opportunity, and this was during the big crash that we had, the last big crash.
So 2008, 2009.
2008. Our office shut down, and through my networking, I had an opportunity to help a small company working through their channeling in technology. So they were a partner of Oracle, and so building out those relationships within the Oracle world. As we were doing that and we were getting clients, I found myself working closely with them and putting deals together, and also helping them manage expectations, manage scope. And one of the gentlemen said to me, you act an awful lot like a project manager. And that was how it happened. It's just, somebody told me a long time ago, just keep saying yes. And whenever he said that to me, the bells and whistles went off, and I had the background as a project coordinator. Now this was technology, but it was still processes, it's still systems. And I took a risk, and I started working as a project manager, and I have not looked back. And then throughout the years, I've moved from project manager to a senior project manager, and have ran more ERP projects than I can count. Started off on small, just e-commerce, then I did custom. I did a small stint with the state of Colorado, and then stepped into to the ERP world.
Oh, well, I can see how all the dots line up when you look at all the pieces and parts of what you've been doing, and then now it all kind of accumulates into the where you are today.
Yeah, if you looked at my resume, somebody saw my resume and they'll look at it and they'll say, how did you go from nonprofit to here? But as you just said, when you hear the story, you can see how the dots do connect, and how life, and I do believe that life can direct us into those directions. I do believe that I was meant to be a project manager.
So you just have that ability to kind of probably juggle a lot of balls, relate to a lot of different people, and kind of see things from beginning to end and move things forward, right? You know, I guess that's when I think of my project management and change management experience, those are the things that
Absolutely. Absolutely, which comes back to the original thing where I said retail didn't work or being a buyer didn't work. This is very dynamic.
Yeah.
And I have an opportunity, and not only is it dynamic, I have an opportunity to work with groups of people. So there's that sociology, because every time I work with a new company, I am working with a new group, a new team. I'm working with a new CEO. I'm working with a new CFO. I am working with new dynamics, different culture, and helping them move from A to B to C on where they want to be. And I love that. And then when I get them there, then I get to move on to the next. And I love that. I love that beginning and ending. And as you said, juggling multiple things.
Yeah. Wow, we have kind of very similar backgrounds. I did a considerable amount of project management, change management in corporate, but it was all for the same company, but it was a lot of times different business units, different divisions, some were corporate level. And, you know, that was, I think a satisfaction I got was there was a beginning and an end. And you did that, and it was all about getting to that end. And so when I think about, you know, running a team or a department, many times there's not an end to it, right? There's just the day-to-day, you know, there's obviously projects and stuff, but maybe that's something at a greater satisfaction level that I need. So
Yeah.
talk about, did you end up getting any other kind of formal education? You know, did you get a PMP or any change management education when you started moving into that for-profit or corporate space and moving more into project management?
Actually, what happened was when I was back in my nonprofit, I went back to school and I got my master's degree, and I went to a school in Santa Monica called University of Santa Monica. And what we got there was I got a master's degree in counseling, psych, and psychology. And one of the things I noticed when I went to USM was that the majority of the people, because this is still, in my mind, I'm still going to become, you know, I'm going to become a therapist, right? I'm going to go on and do counseling 101. But what I realized when I went to school there, and I'd fly in there 1 week in a month, was that the majority of the people in my class, and there was 200 and some of us, were business people. And I learned by going through that program and going through the class that there was so much that I could apply what I was learning in school to the business world. And that's what really opened me up. And that's what really catapulted me to this next step. Now, to the PMP. Every time that I have sat and gotten ready to go to the PMP, I have ended up on a very large project. So I have actually never gotten my PMP certification, although I have attempted to get it. I have had the books, I've, you know, been signed up for the courses, but I have never, fortunately, I should knock on wood, I have consistently stayed busy with projects since I started this, that I have never been in a lull where I could really just dedicate myself to that certification. That certification 10 times harder than the integrative certified health coach program that I did. And I shouldn't say that, but it's true. I mean, if you read the textbook for a PMP certification, it is mind-boggling.
It's intense. No, and I never got mine either. I remember talking to a boss at one point and said, you know, do you think I need to get that credential? And she's like, are you kidding me? And she kind of rattled off my experiences, like, you don't need that. And I'm like, Oh, good, because I didn't really want to go do it.
Right, exactly, right? Now, I have through Regis in the early years, I did go through training for Agile. So I do know the Agile approach in project management. So I do practice both Agile as well as Waterfall and the blended two, which have come in handy. So I can vacillate between, I can be standard waterfall girl, or I can also do Agile.
Yeah.
I prefer Agile in a lot of ways. I prefer the blend actually in both. So I did get some training on that. I have not been certified as a Scrum Master for same reasons, right? Like I've just been fortunate enough to be busy.
Yeah. Well, and when you do have, you're already established, I get this a lot of times, you're already established, do you really need it? It's usually when it's a requirement to get that next job or the next level. And many times you don't need that because you've already got the collateral of all of the experience. So
yeah, and that's true.
I don't want to discourage people if they're really interested in getting it. At the same
Oh,
time,
absolutely.
I did see a lot of value that I was more interested in the leadership aspect of the projects than I was in the PMP aspect or but what I wanted was the overall, you need to know the language, you need to be able to communicate and relate to people. And a lot of times that's what those programs will give you. So yeah, and certainly the Agile is another whole technique, and that's obviously the ability to work with technologists. You need to know that how they are.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I did a 5-year stint on the product side. So I worked for a software company, and that totally came in handy because when you're working for a products company, you're definitely dealing with the full life cycle of the product, and you're definitely dealing with developers and engineers and needing to talk that talk as well as talk to your clients. So, I mean, there's different lingos there, different lingos.
Yeah, different lingos as well as different priorities and hot buttons. And so you've talked a lot about, you've had some great success. It sounds like you've been kind of in control of your career choices, except for, of course, when you got sick. But did you ever have setbacks or situations where you didn't get a promotion or didn't get the job that you were looking for or didn't get that big project that you really were gunning for?
Absolutely. I would say, going back to just a more recent one with the illness, right? So when prior to being diagnosed, my career path was really going farther up. So I wanted to take the next step up. Right. I wanted, although I've worked as a program manager, which, I'm sure Kathy, is where you're running multiple projects and have multiple PMs, but I wanted to take that next step up and do more of an oversight of the project managers and program managers. And there was an opportunity that had come up within Ultra that I was prepared to put my hat in the ring, and that I believe that I was being groomed for. And I was not able to do that because of my health. My health has created, which I hate the word limitations, but it has created that for me. I can only run so fast now. I'm 100% better, but I always have to be 100% careful at how far I push myself, how hard I work. So the size and the depth of what I used to do is no longer viable for me because my health has to be a priority. So I would say that, that's been very recent. Definitely have had that in the past as well. I remember when I was back in mental health, I wanted to be an advocate, a client advocate, or a family advocate. And I wanted that job so bad. I applied for it. I visualized, I did all the things they say to do. I didn't get it. I was devastated. But I have found throughout my career, and so today, that I used to have a client that used to say, every time God says no, I say, thank you, God. Now, I'm not a religious person. I am a spiritual person, however. And I do remind myself of that every time a door, and it's true, where a door is closed, a window opens. I know it's an analogy, but it is so true. It has been my experience. Something doesn't work out. There's always been something better. There's always been a different path that I have taken.
You just needed enough data points sometimes to be convinced, right? Some people just have that faith initially as soon as it happens. And sometimes
Exactly.
some of us need a little bit of evidence and data points and go,
It's,
oh,
it's true. It's true. But when I look back, I go, oh, thank goodness. Like, thank goodness that didn't happen. Or thank goodness, because if that had happened, then this wouldn't have happened.
yeah,
You know, if I had done the family advocacy, I would not have become a project coordinator. I don't know if my path would be where I am today.
yeah,
You know, I don't know. So when I look back at those points, I truly believe that things had to happen a certain way in order for me to get here.
yeah. And now you're here. So,
And now I'm here.
so are you loving that you wear two hats? I mean, do you feel like you're really, kind of doing the best of both work, right? You get to be a coach and you get to be doing this project management, which is dynamic and feeds you in that way.
Yeah, I do love it. I love it. I have I do a lot of social media. I hired a social media person to help do all of that, because that's very time extensive. Obviously, I provide all the content, which is also in itself time extensive. But for me, it's very therapeutic in a lot of ways, to provide that content and send that out there. And then co-facilitator and myself, we co-facilitate a Lyme group, and we meet once a month, and we'll either bring in a physician, some qualified speaker for the group, or we do an open forum. And that's very, very much, that just fills me up in so many ways, and especially now with COVID, because we cannot be together. And they all say, thank God, Jodi, you know somewhat of technology. Well, I have a Zoom account, right? But to a lot of folks, that's a big deal. Like, they don't understand that. So getting on Zoom is a big deal, especially if you're super sick. So helping them have that access and connection with other people. So for me, the health coach is really my service work. It's really my give back. It's really a piece. Ironically, I was telling my husband this not too long ago. There was something that was missing for me for a long time. When I left nonprofit, I became a Rotarian, and I was on these boards, and I was volunteering, and I was doing all this stuff, which was too much. I had to stop. It was too much. And but I was missing that, right? So this fills me up in both ways.
Yeah. So it sounds like the Lyme disease, maybe in a way, it slowed you down.
It did.
It helps you prioritize maybe, well, what do I really want? I have limited energy, even though you felt like you didn't, right? Because you were probably burning the candle at both ends and
oh yes,
going. And all of a sudden it's like, no, I do have to take care of myself in order to be the best that I can be, versus just be everything to everybody. I mean, I can totally see how that can.
Absolutely. Yeah. Got to have my 8 hours of sleep, non-negotiable. Where before, sleep was the first thing I'd let go of. Got to eat the right foods. I mean, all of that. So the changes I've had to make due to the Lyme disease are, when I talk to anybody about it, they're all good changes, right? They're all things that make a strong foundation. So although it's been very hard for me not to burn the candle at both ends and make those changes, and I find them, I say limitations, it's not been a bad thing. I mean, I definitely would not want to advocate Lyme for anybody, but what I have personally learned from this has been invaluable.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you're talking about them as limitations. But you're right. But at the same time, you're talking about, but these are all positive lifestyle habits. So, I don't know, I'm kind of torn between, but you really,
it's true.
How can you develop those, and can you, and still be and that's the big question. Can you have those, those high powered positions that you were talking about, maybe trying to get into, if you're not on the road all the time? Does it take 24/7, commitment to something like that? And some of those jobs are that way, and you start going, wow.
Oh yeah, that was one of the first things that I had to do. I mean, obviously this is pre-COVID, but I was traveling every week, And then the first thing I had to do, and I did have to disclose to my clients that, and I would do every other week. That's still a lot though, right? For a lot of people, traveling every other week is a lot, but I was traveling every other week consistently through those really rough times.
Wow. Wow. How did you have the energy for that? Because it sounds like
Well,
what line does is it zaps your energy.
it does. Yeah, I would, I was very clear. I did nothing after off, like I would literally go back to my hotel. If I was traveling with anybody, they knew I didn't, I was what we called a shut-in as a joke, right? No, no dinners, no cocktails, no nothing after work. I couldn't entertain the client after hours. I mean, I literally would go back to my hotel, order food, and go to bed. And I mean, that's what I had to do. I mean, I would be in bed on the road at 7 every night.
Yeah.
It was
Okay,
just,
so those are limitations. Those aren't just, positive.
no, those are limitations. Those are limitations.
So it sounds like you had really strict limitations during the recovery period, but now are you able to do, more normal, that you wouldn't be in bed at 7?
I haven't traveled since COVID, so I don't know.
Mm.
I really turned the corner at the end of last year. So I had just started the travel in March, and then the restrictions came in on the travel. And then obviously I do work with consultants that are traveling right now. I am not because of my underlying health conditions. So everything that I'm doing now is 100% remote.
Yeah. Well, and how is that working?
It's working pretty well. I have a CFO that will tell you that they feel the long arm of Jodi regardless if I'm on site or not. That's a direct quote. I actually, John would say that. Yeah, so it's gone well. Video helps a lot. And just that ongoing communication. Obviously, I don't have the same experience of being on site and truly understanding, feeling that culture. But what I've done is more coaching, working with my, the client, my counterpart, that's the client person, the person that's, the PM from them, which is often like the VP of supply chain or, somebody of that nature, and coaching them. So I get to use my coaching skills and helping them as they're navigating and working on turning their culture and moving their culture forward. So it's been a very interesting transition, but it's going well. I mean, my clients are doing well and they are all moving forward. So.
Well, yeah, it seems like you would almost have to set up, because normally you would have that time where you might go to lunch with that person if you were on site, right? And then you get that, hey, how's it really going? Where are you struggling? And then you could actually be doing some coaching sort of during that. So now you probably have to be more purposeful and set up the meeting and so it's not as maybe informal or casual, but yeah, you don't get that.
We do a lot of texting. We do a lot of this, but building those relationships virtually, and it's different. It's very different, but it's working. And there has been some things I've had to change within how I work with my clients. But like I said, they're all moving forward, and I would say and they don't know the difference, right? Because they haven't worked with me before. I mean, because all of these projects were kicked off right at the end of last year.
Oh, interesting. So then, okay.
So sometimes if you don't know the difference, right?
Very interesting. So this is just the new way of doing it, and this is how we've always done it, right? For 2020 on and beyond. So.
Yeah, exactly. We'll see.
Well, Jodi, obviously we could chat for most of the afternoon, so we do have to start wrapping up here. Why don't you kind of wrap up with this, summarizing, looking back, what do you think has best served you over the years? It maybe a characteristic, a habit, a personality trait, or a strength? What do you feel like has best served you?
Two things. I would say tenacity. And the second one is I would have to say, and I don't want to use the word discipline because that's not the right, but I would have to say just the commitment to do what I need to do. And my doctors have even said that about me with all my protocols I have to do with Lyme, that and I think I learned that from running, right? If anybody's ever trained for a run or some event, there's just certain things you have to do. You have to put in the miles, you have to eat right, you have to sleep right. And so taking that and putting that into my work or into my health, just plugging that in, I would say that has been the key for me, in getting, from where I was to where I am. And that is what I try to instill with my clients that I'm working with, whether it's one-on-one or with my corporate clients.
Yeah, so you're not looking for shortcuts. You're not skipping steps. You know what are those key milestones and those steps to success. So we got to do them. And
you got to do them. There are no shortcuts. Yeah, there's no shortcuts. They say 28 days to change a behavior, but in my master's program, they said 32 days. You got to give a few more extra days to cement it.
4 more days. It'll make it.
4 more days. The 28 days just get you through, but you need those 4 days to cement it.
So how many days have we had of this COVID? So we've had more than enough time to change behavior, right?
One would think and hope.
Well, any other words of wisdom that you would share?
I would say that, go for it. If you have something that you're wanting to do, go for it. You'll be so surprised where life will take you.
So don't let that fear creep in. Just go for it. Now, do you have the fear? And does that come in and you just find a way to push it down, or how do you?
Yeah, I think that I have learned to take fear as a motivator. So fear, when I feel the fear, that old analogy, feel the fear and do it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I use it as a way to move me forward. Like that just tells me I'm stepping outside my comfort zone. That just tells me that I'm not used to it. And when I first fell into technology and I didn't understand half what they were saying, I would just ask a lot of questions and kept showing up. And I was so out of my comfort zone, but I knew eventually I would be comfortable.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that aspect of it, because, it's easy to say, oh, I just use fear to motivate me. Well, but what does that really mean? I had a boss once said that she used fear to guide her in decision-making on her career. So if she had 2 or 3 opportunities, the one that scared her the most
is the one she would do.
That was the one she would do.
Yeah. So yeah, because she was out of her comfort zone. Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, that's how you're stretching yourself. That's how you're expanding.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. Well, Jodi, again, I just keep asking you questions, so we really do have to wrap.
Okay, thank you so much, Kathy.
Thank you for sharing your story. You don't know who needed to hear this today, and this is great insight and inspiration. So, listeners, if you enjoyed today's interview, please subscribe below so that you'll be alerted to other interviews as they come out, and then you can be, receiving them as soon as they come out. If you have any questions for me or for Jodi, I post them on my website, lifestorycurator.com. And I'll also post her information about your coaching. So if folks are curious and want to get a hold of you, they certainly can do so. So I guess on that note, everyone, stay safe and stay well, and let's continue the storytelling. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Bye.
Bye.